Hello again. It's been a while for me, and I'm sorry for the downgrade in quality for the PNG YouTuber. As mentioned in the recent poll, I got a new PC and swapped over to ReZaHydra, but there's been quite a few issues with PNG Tuber software on Linux, specifically because of Wayland and because of Godot just not liking Linux right now. And all PNG Tuber software is on Godot. Don't you just love issues like this? Anyways, though, we've officially made it to the most controversial game in the entire Sonic franchise, which feels weird to say when we have games like Forces and Lost World and even Free Riders existing, but hey, we're getting places. Last time when we left off, we covered the entirety of Sonic Rush, which took longer than I expected and led me to splitting it off from this original video because I originally planned for both 06 and Rush to be in the same video. But now you'll only get that experience once the full series video comes out, which it will come out. I've got all the files and all prepared still. Everything still works. Is going to be lower quality for the previous parts. I am going to be very sorry about that. But I hope you all are very excited and are very, very much anticipating that when it does happen. For if you want to watch it all back to back to back or skip specific parts or whatever. And if you have been liking this series so far, I always hate saying this, but please like, share especially, subscribe if you can, hype the video if that's even possible. I don't know if it is or not. All the usual YT stuff. You know the drill. I'm not the person to be forcing this down your throat. It's just the usual stuff. I am shooting for higher production quality. I am shooting for higher everything. That will not come instantly. Again, we still have to wait for the PNG Tuber software to be updated and all, but hey, we are getting places. And with that, all the way, let's just see where this what if goes now. We cut back to when Blaze returns to the Soul Dimension. But in a stroke of unlucky fate, she ends up having to use the Soul Emeralds again not too long after returning in a different battle to protect another priceless relic from a shockingly powerful thief that, in the end, uses said relic to send her across time and space, unconscious but victorious. She awakes now to a ruined city. Magma litters the ground and she doesn't even know where she is anymore. This didn't look like the Soul Dimension, but also looks so ruined. Eventually, though, she encounters a very familiar to us hedgehog. He was on edge at first, but before long they became friends trying to stop a monster that he only knew as Iblis. Back when Blaze first returns to Soul Dimension, however, the events of the first Riders game would begin, and sadly, nothing would change, really. Some small stuff would, but the entire Rider saga, for as much as I would love to write so much about it, stays pretty much the same. There's some small stuff like her kidnapping at the end of Riders 1, but seems like those would either not happen or instead be swapped around with another character like Tails or Sonic. In the end, they go pretty much the same as in canon, and I sadly just cannot think of a unique story for the Riders games for this What If. I apologize dearly for this, but I hope you enjoy what's about to happen next. Now cutting to not long after Blaze is sent to the future and all of that, Soliana is about to have the Festival of the Sun, and right as they do, Eggman interrupts the festivities. Protecting them, however, is none other than a dynamic duo. Amy Rose and Sonic the Hedgehog both had arrived on the scene at the exact same time. Sonic had gotten wind first thanks to the prior busy work of the adventures beforehand that Eggman was on the move to Soliana, and he had relayed this to Tails. Tails in turn had told Amy this, who quickly then caught up to the Blue Blur just in time for both to foil Eggman's scheme of capturing Princess Elise. He mentions something about the flames of disaster, but it falls deaf on the ears of the two hedgehogs, who are merely fighting back the bad things. Amy orders Sonic to get the princess to safety, and Sonic barks back that he was going to do that, but now is having second thoughts thanks to Amy's tone. The two begin a very brief bickering before Sonic just darts off with Elise and Amy holds off Eggman. However, time travel had already happened, and overlooking them is a hedgehog and a cat. Cutting back to where we left them off in the future, 200 years from the present, Blaze and Silver are struggling against Iblis with no hope. He just keeps coming back. That's when, like in canon, Silver has his moment and Mephiles makes his move, and gives them the vision of the Iblis trigger, Sonic the Hedgehog. And yes, it is still Sonic. This will be very, very relevant for later. Silver, the naive kid that he always is, and Blaze, not knowing who this Sonic is from her brief foray into the other's dimension, both only see this as the only way, really, to go at first. Blaze, however, has reservations about doing the deed itself, feeling that something is off. Mephiles themselves felt off to Blaze, but they weren't sure on all this still, only willing to see how it goes, so to speak. Likewise, she was still very confused on where she was, let alone what time she was from being transported. With that, they're transported and see Sonic and Amy saving Princess Elise. Silver, no Amy to impede her this time, actually chases Sonic down. And when they're in a clearing in the city, he approaches and fights him much earlier on. With Eggman distracted by Amy and the civilians in hiding, the only people to see this duel were Elise and Blaze. And Sonic was losing. Silver's telekinesis proved too strong. It was clearly no use fighting against it. For all of Sonic's speed, Silver had no restraint on his power, and nobody holding him back. Elise was mortified, but holding in her emotions as she saw the Blue Blur be smacked around more and more until the fight stopped. Amy had came and smacked Silver in the head with her hammer, sending him flying into a building. I see the fastest thing alive still can't put up a proper fight. She bickeringly jokes at the hedgehog, but Sonic, while getting up, isn't having any comeback for her for once. Just silence and a glare. Instantly hearing this, or rather, lack thereof, Amy got serious. She first asked if the two of them were alright, before asking what happened. I think I can explain that one, Amy. Another voice rang out. Blaze was back. She goes to hug the cat, only for her to sidestep out of the way, causing the girl to trip and skid. Getting a laugh from Sonic, finally, even if a pained one. Blaze explained that she was first sent 200 years into the future of Amy's world. Then her and Silver were sent back to here to kill the Iblis Trigger, pointing at Sonic. Hearing this, Elise chimes up. He's not the vessel of Iblis. Hearing this, Blaze immediately widens her eyes. She realizes what she means, but lets Elise continue, explaining that 10 years ago, her father sacrificed himself to bring forth Solaris, only for everything to go wrong. She doesn't remember much, but she knows that Solaris was split into two vessels, and one of those vessels now lays inside of herself, held back by her emotions. Silver, now finally getting up while hearing all of this, is taken aback. He's more confused and questions now what Mephiles had sent them back for then. While everyone is confused by what's going on, Eggman finally returns, though is less hostile now that the truth is out, having heard it straight from Elise's mouth, only proving to him that if he can find a way to manipulate the beast inside of her, he could rule the world! Or at least, that's what he gloats about. Silver chimes up and says that where he's from 200 years from now, there is no world left. Just magma and ruins and Iblis. The group of enemies and friends talk for a bit longer on what's going on. They all had a lot to talk about after all. However, something else happens elsewhere to cause more issues. Just like in canon, Shadow and Rouge get the Scepter of Darkness from an Eggman base, and it's cracked on their escape, leading to Mephiles from the past being free and taking the form of Shadow the Hedgehog. With Eggman not being there, this was just done by a regular badnik this time, but still. He knows the two pose a threat and sends them to the future where they enact their same plotline as in canon for now. However, not only is Mephiles just now free in the present, but throughout their time in the ruined future, Shadow and Rouge never encounter Mephiles. And this fact is going to haunt all of them. Eggman had quickly fled the conversation once it turned useless, and Amy let him go for the night, keeping in mind where he was heading. The rest of the group decided to rest up for the night as well, though Silver barely slept. On top of just being enamored with the past, he was confused, perplexed. He felt betrayed by Mephiles. He was in a rough state, to say the least. By the time that everyone was up, however, and plans were being made, Tails and Knuckles had arrived. Those two and Amy would chase Eggman, keeping him in check. Meanwhile, Silver and Sonic and Blaze were tasked with protecting Elise while Shadow and Rouge went dark. But we're really going full Team Dark in the future now with the Shutdown Omega being found by them. They are, of course, trying to find the Chaos Emeralds to try and find a way back to the past as normal. This all eventually leads to Eggman still tricking Amy, Tails, and Knuckles into the future 200 years later with the time machine that Amy had placed the Chaos Emerald in. The hunt for the Chaos Emeralds to get back, and eventually them returning just in time for what would normally be the deaths of Eggman and Elise, but not only was Shadow here this time. This wasn't the present day. They had overshot it. This was the day of the Solaris incident. The group instantly knew what needed to be done. Shadow seals Mephiles as a cannon, while Amy helps Iblis be sealed in Elise. After this, they finally use Chaos Control one more time to get to the present, properly this time, arriving in New Soyana and away from the others, but determined to make things right. It's a quick enough trek, but when they get there, things had already spiraled, and likewise the changes have changed what is happening in the present. And it's time to talk about what Sonic, Silver, and Blaze's group, or Team Confusion as they could be called at this point, were up to. Sonic, brash and cocky still as ever, slightly more than canon even, thanks to how this what if has changed him, is furious at Silver for even wanting to kill him, and is still dedicated to protecting Elise. Each time Eggman attempts to kidnap her or attack Soleanna, the three of them keep him at bay, or rather, his badniks. After Amy, Knuckles, and Tails went silent, only badniks ever attacked. Even once the main mothership had returned and floated above the city, it just stood there, the Doctor never descending from it again since the initial attack. With it just standing there, Blaze really was trying to hold back going up there and burning the entire ship down herself. Her flames on the inside burning herself at this point in silent rage. But Silver, he didn't know what to do. Mephiles was wrong. Wrong about everything. The Iblis trigger was not who he said it was. And the person who it was, Elise, the true vessel of Iblis, he couldn't do it. He couldn't bring himself to harm Elise. Over this time as well, Elise was growing detached to the other three as they awaited the return of the others. But a week went by and they were radio silent. Eggman would win if this kept up, as their stamina was beginning to drain. All of this, Mephiles had already expected. And the future version of himself had secretly sealed himself inside of Silver with the time travel he used to bring him and Blaze here. Now, sensing the return of the group from the past to the present day, he finally acted. Silver felt it instantly, trying to resist, but not understanding what was happening or how to properly even. The other three were confused as Silver writhed in some sort of pain before finally a dark chuckle echoed out. The time is almost nigh, and he is almost here. All that's left is for my sacrifice. Future Mephiles took over the hedgehog's body and began to attack the group. Sonic still stood no chance alone, but Blaze was there to help him, and with her pyrokinesis, kept him in check. The main issue was him trying to constantly go for Elise. The others needed to get here, and fast. Future Mephiles in Silver's body was very powerful, equivalent to that of Super Silver. And while this was still weaker than the Mephiles Shadow fought at the end of his campaign overall, due to technically being sealed, he outpaced the other two. Eventually, he started landing actual injuries on Elise. Elise was holding in her tears, the pain unbearable but still staying so strong to prevent Iblis from releasing, trying to run from the possessed hedgehog, as the others distracted and defended against him. Running from Mephiles was always going to end in failure, however, especially in Silver's possessed body. Eventually, he got hurt in a precocious situation with his psychokinesis, and right before a killing blow could be struck on the princess, Amy came in and blocked it with her hammer. They all make a very brief catch-up and ready to fight in a defensive perimeter around the princess. Before Amy, Sonic's sister figure, Amy, Tails' big sister, Amy, Knuckles' close friend, Amy, the person who got Shadow to remember their past and remember who they were meant to be. Amy, who had shown Blaze lessons she would never have learned and would keep for the rest of her life. Amy, and all of her compassion, in a single strike from behind by the Mephiles in the present, was slain right in front of Elise. She finally can't hold back the tears any longer. Everything culminating in the injured, bleeding princess finally crying in defeat and failure. As Eggman swoops down finally from his ship, trying to stop everything personally. Tails and Sonic were the first ones to get to her as she utters her last words. Don't let go of... Her eyes go blank, breath fading for good as they close. While incomplete, the message was clear to the both of them. Foregoing compassion, even in rage, was never who Amy was, and she didn't want any of them to either. As Iblis is released into the present from Elise, present Mephiles began to absorb the latent monster using the Chaos Emeralds that were present on Amy's body, truly becoming Solaris. Future Mephiles, in a moment of euphoric peace, laughing in Silver's body, was shattered in this moment, along with time itself, merely leaving an unconscious Silver as Eggman gathered everyone and brought them to safety aboard the egg carrier. He had modified it to withstand time manipulation and, by proxy, the shattering of time, expecting that something was up given his failing plans and now how everything had been looking for the past while, but not quite knowing what would happen until it was too late. In spite of Mephiles using the Chaos Emeralds to ascend to Solaris, Amy still had them on her body. They had darkened some, but they were still there. And the lifeless hedgehog was brought aboard, while Sonic and Tails couldn't help but sob and grieve next to her. Eggman then takes a moment to look at his fallen nemesis and scoffs, wishing for it to have been him to have done the deed himself. Much flashier, even if elaborate, and to not destroy time in the process, obviously. Blaze snapped back with her flames erupting that he nearly broke reality the last time he tried anything like this. Tensions were very high and raising. But before more arguing could ensue, Silver finally woke up and Elise explained something shocking now that they were all here. There should be a copy of Amy's soul in the Chaos Emeralds, but only true love, regardless of what form, could bring it out. And there was a chance that wouldn't even work. Sonic, the most emotionally distraught here, yet also the one most connected to Elise now, broke hearing this. I'm supposed to believe that my sister's copy is good enough? His screams silenced everyone in the room, until finally metallic clanking could be heard in the distance. After a short while of looking for what it was, she appeared. Metal Amy. Eggman had her on board in stasis like in SA1, but even he didn't expect her to arrive. The bot couldn't speak after everything that had happened, so Eggman hooked her up to a speaker just to see if she wanted to say anything. There is no such thing as copies, only memories to hold on to. Eggman was very shocked by this confession from his own creation, but Metal Amy merely unplugged herself from the speaker right after and just stood there. He comments that she must still remember everything from the incident when she became Neo Metal Amy, while Sonic stood stunned by the profound yet short words of the robot. Tails turned to Elise now, asking to give him and Sonic a shot. They're the closest to the girl. Shadow butts in and says he'll join in. If it weren't for Amy, I wouldn't have remembered my promise to Maria. Wouldn't be who I am today. Even Metal Amy now took 3 singular steps forward and blinked her digitized eyes once, implying she too wanted to join in. With this much love and affection for someone now gone in the room, Elise began the ritual, feeling more confident than ever that it would work. Silver, recovering as the Chaos Emeralds began to spin around the room with everyone watching, finally spoke up. This is all my fault for trusting in that demon, and I'll make sure to fix that at your side. He joined in with the crowd, and his words were echoed as Metal Amy beeped with her head nodding to him, in what everyone could only assume was something akin to her own atonement. Sonic spoke up next. Even Even if this ritual doesn't work, you still owe me that race back from Little Planet, Amy. Tears welled up in his eyes. Tails spoke up next. If it wasn't for you, I would have never done as much as I have. Thank you. The boy's eyes too became misty as tears streamed down at the words. He was too heartbroken to properly join the fight, but he wanted to at least participate in the ritual. And with that, Shadow then spoke up. This is for my promise to Maria. To everything that you have helped me with. I suppose you could say I'm repaying my debt. Thank you. After his words, all of them embrace the girl's body. A golden sheen then begins to overtake the entire room. And when it calms, Amy is standing there in her super form. She opens her eyes and understands to a degree what just happened, but knows that even her power alone isn't enough. The Chaos Emeralds still spun and shone bright lights around the room. Eggman in amazement while the rest were either stunned or in tears. Everyone happy to see her back. Even Eggman cracking a smile. She reached her hands out to Sonic and Shadow, believing they were the only ones who would join in, but they weren't. Silver shoved his way towards them, saying that he caused all of this mess. If anyone deserves the help, he's at the top of the list. Metal Amy likewise walked up as well once more, both placing their hands in two. In an instant, Sonic, Shadow, and Silver had entered their super forms properly, while Metal Amy had begun to emit a golden hue, not unlike Metal Sonic did in the Mania animations that they had released. The emeralds vanished, their power spread through the 5 of them combined as each became their own control version of chaos. Blaze wished them luck as they left the egg carrier, knowing that she wouldn't have been able to help without the power of his soul emeralds. Eggman had opened it up for them as well, so they didn't break anything on the way out, and so that the time bubble that they were in didn't also fracture. And thus, they fought against Solaris, now in its full power. And Solaris fought hard. Very, very, very hard. But even in the original version of events, where it was just the 3 main hedgehogs that were enough to truly defeat the Reborn God, we now have Amy and Metal Amy being in the mix, and a lot more power overall. Solaris never stood a chance. I wish I could describe the fight, but such a duel would be one-sided anyways, if I even could. Solaris was defeated, shattering across everything, but time still remained fractured. And after it was all over, they returned to the egg carrier, where Eggman then suggests the erasure of the flame that caused the Solaris project to begin with. Though Elise then warned that it would revert the timeline to a few days before everything began. It would erase most, if not all, of their memories of the events of the past 2 weeks. It would erase all meaning to all of this. Yet still, Amy said they need to do it. It was her and Elise this time at the flame. Elise comments that she still doesn't feel strong enough, that she won't be a great ruler, that she'll break down and the kingdom will fall. But Amy gives an impassioned speech. You withstood 10 years with a burden like this already. Now with it lifted, you can be as free as me and my friends. Maybe we'll even meet again, just to prove that point. She chuckles some, the girls bonding and laughing, before finally Amy said one final thing. Above all, stay compassionate, stay caring, and let your love always be known, and all will be right. After hearing this, they both nod and Elise blows out the candle. Amy woke up in her rebuilt apartment in Station Square. The memories were very hazy, but she remembered something about some festival and telling some girl to be strong and let her love and compassion be known. It was all a haze, a blur, if you would. But upon reading the newspaper, she saw that the Festival of the Sun was occurring in just a few days. She didn't think much on it at the time until she got a knock at the door and saw Sonic and Shadow. They both wanted to go to the festival. They didn't know why, but they felt like it'd be fun to explore the kingdom since it's an area they've never really been to, and since they have no leads on what Eggman's doing at the moment. Amy agrees to this, and a few days later, they watch as the festival goes off without a hitch. In the far distance, Eggman has parked his egg carrier, being ordered to by Metal Amy, who clearly wanted something. But when he did so, she just left. He normally didn't like this. He liked his creations behaving in his orders and not on their own, or going against him. But this was his finest work so far in his eyes, so he kept an eye on her, but was just perplexed as to what the reason even was for going to the festival. And with that, all for attending the festivities and everything going well, what can now be dubbed as Amy the Hedgehog 06 comes to a close. As I mentioned in a community post, you all have really shown that you love this series. So the next part isn't going to be what I originally intended. Originally, there was going to be a lot of timeline skipping. But we'll get to what comes next when we get to it. What's most pressing, though, is that you all have decided what comes next before even getting to this part. I had made a promise in this script, and you all have met it. And now it is time for us to not only have 7 rings in Amy's hand and to see what's up with the Black Knight, but truly see where all these endless possibilities can take us. thank you. Thank you so very much for watching this part. This was a mess to write for. I had to keep track of so much stuff, and I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. I also couldn't figure out a proper death for future Mephiles, as was very obvious from the whole, oh, he knew he'd get shattered with time as Solaris form excuse. Which, to be fair, in 06, we never got an actual answer to what happens to future Mephiles. So that sort of doesn't change anything there. It more or less just gives me an out. But still, thank you all so very much for watching this far. If you did like this part, or if you had some critiques, please let me know. I worked very hard on all of this. And as mentioned at the beginning, you know what to do, the usual YT stuff. I'm not going to do the spiel every time. I hate doing the spiel. I'm not that kind of content creator. I just want to be someone who is a fun personality who you can enjoy. And with that, have a wonderful day, night, week, Happy New Year, or rest of the year, whatever this goes live. Whatever. I hope to see you sometime soon.